Hello, 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 everybody. Just doing a quick mic check. Please let me know if you can hear this in chat. Today we are going to be doing a writing task 1 together. As usual, please remember to like and subscribe. We are going to be writing this together quite quickly, but if you want to submit your own response to this essay, feel free to send it to us at corrections@IELTSGrind.com. You can see that in both the description down below and at the top of this live stream in the upper right hand corner right above my cursor. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. Of course, we need to write our intro, our overview, our body 1 and our body 2. And this is a natural process, so that means two things. Number one, we cannot use first, second, third. We cannot say first, and we cannot say finally, because these words mean that there is a beginning and an end. Because there is no beginning and no end, we can't do it. Secondly, we are not going to be using passive voice here too much, because this is a natural process. When we have the passive voice, it means that someone has done it. Because this is natural, obviously no one did it. So no passive voice, mostly active voice here. Alright guys, let's do this. We're going to set the timer for 20 minutes and see if we can finish in that time. First of all, we need to write our intro, and our intro means we should rephrase this. By the way guys, if you guys ever want to submit your own sentences as for an intro or an overview, or even in body 1 and body 2, feel free. So we need to change what this means. So I will probably go from active voice to passive voice. So the stages of life that a frog goes through is illustrated in the given diagram. Alright, and this is probably the hardest part, is paraphrasing life cycle. And by the way, let me make all of this a bit bigger so everyone can see it clearly. And I did that by saying the stages of life that a frog goes to. Being able to paraphrase is extremely important. It will raise your vocab score. Second is illustrated, is going from active voice, shows is active voice, to passive voice. So even though I won't be able to use passive voice a lot in my essay, I can still show the examiner I know how to do this. Also, illustrated is a higher level way of saying shows. So just learning 1 or 2 words like illustrated will be good enough. And finally, please, please, please make sure that you do not say below, because there will be no image below my essay. Alright, so that's the basics. When you are writing your own intro, you should spend no more than 1 minute, 2 minutes at the most, and 2 minutes is quite long. 30 seconds is what I recommend you do. Next up, the rest of this essay will be about this, so we need to make sure that we analyze what we see. What I see are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 stages. 11 steps in this life cycle. What we need to do is think about how we can split it into 2 or 3 stages. You can have 3 body paragraphs if you want. For this one, I will probably choose... Okay. I will probably choose to do this in body 1 and this in body 2. This is on land. This is in the waters, and this is on land. If you guys know a high level way to say in the water or a high level way to say on land, put that in chat, and I will call you a super student if you know the word. It is a very high level word. In water starts with an A, and on land starts with a T. So if you know these, please put them in chat. By the way, if I'm going too fast, please know that you guys can see this document yourself. If you guys go to the IELTS Grind, and down here we can see our thing. Don't forget to hit the like button. And then down here you can actually click and see the document yourself. And you guys can also see our schedule. Also, one last thing, please remember that you should be watching this live by pressing this button. You guys can go back and rewatch as much as you want. And then also down here, if you guys want to see the image or me writing it, feel free to click that link and follow along. But we have our in the water stages and on land stage. So we are going to write our overview. Our overview for describing a process is one of the easiest overviews to write. I'm always very happy to teach it because it is so easy. Of course, we start with overall. This process requires 11 steps divided into 2 stages. Remember, stages are bigger than steps. So 11 steps, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 7 steps in stage 1, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 steps in stage 2. Now this is the basic overview. If you just use this sentence frame for any process, you will get a 6 because you have an overview and it's good enough. However, if you want a higher score, you're going to have a slightly better overview. So we will say, overall, this process requires 11 steps divided into 2 stages. Those on land and those in the water. Now, this would bring it up to a 7 because the grammar is correct and it is better than normal. However, we can go even further. An 8 would probably say aquatic and terrestrial. These are the 2 high-level words that I would recommend. So this is like our workspace. Let's go down a little bit further and make sure that we have the whole thing here. So we have our overview, we have our intro, and now it is time to do the hard part. The only hard part about this kind of task 1 is that a lot of students have trouble because they don't have enough words. After they describe all the steps, they don't know what to say. They can't write 150 words because there aren't enough steps here to have 150 words. The way that you get around this is you need to look at the pictures and describe them. So we're going to start, because we have to start somewhere, we're going to start here. So remember, we can't say in the beginning or first. So we'll say small, round frog eggs are laid in the water. So what I want to show you guys here is I'm describing it, which are transparent with black centers, are laid in the water and hatch and transform into embryos. Now, I am probably using some slightly higher level vocabulary, but that's why you watch these streams, right? Is so that you guys can learn them. And you guys can still get a pretty good score if your grammar is correct, but you don't quite know the right word to use, and instead you use paraphrasing. Be careful though, for paraphrasing to get you that high score that you want, you will need to have correct grammar and correct collocations. If you try to use high-level vocab and grammar, but you have too many mistakes, that will get you a 6 instead of a 7. And if you have way too many mistakes where the examiner can't understand what you're trying to say, then it drops to a 5. Okay. And of course, if you do not use any high-level vocab, if you use only simple sentences, that brings you down to a 4 or a 5. So let's keep going in the second step. These eventually become tadpoles. And remember, we can try to describe them, which are black, elongated, what shape would we call that? Which have relatively round black bodies with a skinny tail. Fat, round, black bodies with a long, skinny tail. These tadpoles attach themselves to, or hold on to is probably better, the aquatic plants around them. And we can probably, they said plants there, so you can say aquatic plants. I'm going to go even higher. I'm going to say vegetation. So hold onto the aquatic vegetation around them. Alright guys, so we're still in the first paragraph because we're describing these. And I hope you guys see, when they give you words, when they give you descriptions like this, it's your job to change the language and the grammar if you can. If they give you a verb, change it to a noun. If they give you a noun, change it to a verb. And of course, paraphrase or think of synonyms, other ways to say the words that they give you. If you use the words exactly the same in the diagram on your essay, they actually do not count towards your vocabulary score, and they do not count towards your word count, because they are not your words. You're just copying them, so it's not representative of your vocabulary and your writing. So make sure you always change what you see. Next up, we can see that they grow external gills for breathing, but it's also important to note that they change the picture as well. So these tadpoles grow because it's a bit bigger and have slightly thicker tails, and also grow gills so they can breathe. So instead of for breathing, so they can breathe. Let's write that down real fast. Again, we're trying to write this very quickly to show you guys how fast you should be writing. These tadpoles continue to grow and develop. They grow, they develop gills so they can breathe, and their tails become stronger. And that's really describing both of these pictures. Stronger and eventually longer. Now I do want to point out the word eventually. A lot of students may be confused because I just said you can't use the word finally and you can't use the word first. Why can I use the word eventually? It's because eventually does not mean the end. It's talking about how long it takes before the next step, but it's not saying it's a sequential step. So please be careful of the difference between eventually and finally. All right. Next up, hind legs appear. As they continue to grow, back legs develop. And the tadpole consumes its own tail to continue to survive. All right, and that brings us to the end of the aquatic stages. So, the next stage is on land. And this is a very simple sentence, but that's perfectly fine. The most important thing is that the meaning is clear. So the next stage is on land. The body of the tadpole becomes more frog-shaped. And the tail continues to shrink. Okay. You can also see the eyes are extruding from the head, and the body is becoming more oval, or more elongated. So let's say that. The eyes extrude a bit from the head, and the body becomes more elongated instead of round. And by the way, if there are any times when there's a word that you guys don't understand, feel free to let me know. So for example, elongated means become longer. So more elongated, becomes more elongated, means the body becomes longer. So here it was more of a circle, and here it is more elongated. Also, extrude a bit from the head. Here, the eyes are clearly in the head, and here the eyes are kind of outside of the head. And this is what I mean when I say that when you guys are writing this essay, if you don't have enough to say, you need to describe the picture. If you don't know how to say extrude from the head, instead you can say pop out. The eyes start to pop out from its head. So again, it's perfectly okay if you use lower level vocabulary. However, it is important that you use it correctly. Again, the most important thing is that the meaning is clear. Alright guys, next up, the tail becomes shorter. We already talked about that. And then once the tail disappears, it becomes a young frog. So I'm going to talk about the change here. Once the tail completely disappears, these creatures are considered to be young frogs. So this is a nice little sentence frame that you guys can learn. Once, and then the comma. So once A, comma B, you're describing the relationship between the two. We can see next that it then becomes an adult frog. So not much changes aside from the size as they grow to become adult frogs. These semi-aquatic beings then mate and lay eggs in the water, continuing the cycle. Alright guys, if you guys want to write your own essay, maybe if you are afraid that you don't have the vocabulary that I do and you want to try to say the same things with lower level vocabulary and grammar, feel free to send that to us. We would be happy to help out and fix it for you. Also remember that you can send us speakings as well. I happen to like describing a process essays, but again, the main things that you need to remember is it is a cycle, so there is no beginning and there is no end. Also, if you can't think of what to say, make sure you describe the picture for those extra words. And finally, remember that the overview is very simple. If you just use this sentence frame, you will be fine. You say how many steps, you say how many stages, and then you say what the stages are. So aquatic and terrestrial in this case. And again, if you guys don't know those words, up here we say those on land and those in the water. Alright guys, I hope you guys found this useful. You guys are fantastic for being here and trying to improve your IELTS. I look forward to seeing you guys in the future. If you guys want to see more stuff like this, please let us know in the comments after this video changes to a normal YouTube video. And thank you so much for joining us. This has been Michael from the IELTS Grind, and I hope you have a fantastic day.